I'm Jim Kunkle, and I'd like to welcome two awesome friends of mine. We're going to talk about a very important topic today. We're going to talk about mental health awareness. Before we get into our conversation, Jill, please introduce yourself and let everybody know exactly who you are and what you do.
Sure. So my name is Jill Alexander, and I am the VP of Marketing here at Safeways in Concord, North Carolina. I joined about a year and a half ago, and we are the most responsive partner in fall protection, and we provide safety equipment for primarily construction trades, industry, utility, solar, tower. And a big part of that broader picture of safety is mental health safety. And that just happens to also be a passion of mine personally.
Very good, very good. And my favorite LinkedIn influencer, the man who's taught me so much about being a very humble and being a very powerful influencer. Bruno, welcome.
Well, my name is Bruno Batista, also known as Bruno No BS. I'm not gonna lie to you, I BS a couple times, but that's not a lie. you know, I work for IB Roof Systems. They located in Grapevine, Texas, Dallas. I am the brand ambassador, so pretty much I'm the face of the company. So I help them develop relationships and create new relationships. Also, I help on social media too as well. So
Very good, very good. This is part one of a three-part series focused on mental health. And we're going to have a very open, honest, and helpful discussion in these three mini episodes that we're going to be doing today. The first episode, the first discussion and conversation we're going to have is covering mental health, the basics. And when we think of the basics of mental health, it can mean so many things to so many different people. And Jill, I'd like to get your perspective as to, what is it? What is mental health?
That is such a great question because it really does mean something different to everyone. And what I would like it to mean for people is really it is a part of health, that it is truly just like taking care of your heart and taking care of your feet if you're hiking the Appalachian Trail, and making sure that your brain balance and the way you feel is in line with your overall health and safety, because they are all interconnected. And so while it's important to recognize mental health the same way it is important to recognize endocrinology, and if you're a diabetic, you're going to go see a specialist. But at the same token, I really would love to see, and I'm excited that it's moving towards seeing that connection to just broader health, which means that it is different depending on your age. It's different depending on your ethnicity. It's different depending on your life experience and your genetic background, so that it is individual, but that it deeply affects every human being.
well, in my experience, I believe, for a long time, I did not believe in mental health. I was one of those guys. I think
Yep.
it comes from a man perspective, right? You have like old traditions, like you say, sometimes because of your background, or ethnicity. I always thought, this was, now I'll get over. I never thought it would affect me so much in my life, especially when you turn to, a certain age that sometimes you can even have what we call middle crisis, right? You get in a certain age that
Sure.
you start to not enjoy things that you used to enjoy, and then you start to notice. Because a lot of people, when think about any type of health, they think about the physical health, right? I'm
Right.
gaining weight, I'm losing weight, but no one ever think about the mental health, what's in your brain, and sometimes it can come from the life experience. Sometimes terrible circumstances, and sometimes even new events in your life that could trigger you to have a depression
Absolutely.
and have other things too as well.
And it's exactly like you're saying about, people not wanting to recognize mental health as being real in some ways, and nobody would ever deny that they have a broken leg and that they might need to have crutches and they might need to have assistance with that. But there has been such a stigma in our culture around this idea that mental health isn't real. It doesn't count for anything. And so I'm really glad that you brought that up. And I'm hopeful that that perception is changing. And another thing that you mentioned is that idea of it can start at any time. You might be born with diabetes or you might break your leg. So those are two aspects of health, of physical health, one from birth and one that just is something that happens in life. And mental health is very much the same way. You may be born with a mental health disorder, or you can develop one based on a circumstance or an event. PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder. It happens after a traumatic, stressful event.
And I do agree with you in a point that the PTSD, sometimes, it could be something in a very early stages of your life when you are a very young age, and pretty much your brain blocked those. It put a wall to certain things that happen to your life because, by the end of the day, your brain is trying to protect you against suffering, to have pain, right?
Yep.
So you don't recognize that then from years later, maybe 20 years later, 10 years later, when you start, maybe one thing could trigger to you to remember those memories from the past.
Right. And even that is very much like what we all accept as normal when it comes to physical health. You can be born with, again, I hate to, use the same example, but you can be born with diabetes and not discover you have it until a certain age, or you can develop it later in life. So it really goes back to this idea that it's different for everyone and that there are different circumstances for every individual around, all of the different aspects. You can have anxiety, or you can have depression, you can have, you can have something very, very serious that's, a schizophrenic disorder. But all of those are real, and all of those are a part of our mental health that need to be taken care of and addressed.
Yeah.
And the other thing too, mental disorder, they are very similar. Sometimes you not only have one pretty much disease. You can have ADHD, then you can have also a compulsive behavior disorder. You can have a several disorder that they're very similar. On a young age, a doctor cannot even tell you exactly. A doctor that go to Harvard school, that go to the most famous college or universities, they cannot diagnose a child. They know something is wrong. There's a term on a hospital, right? In the doctors, it's called QNR, quite not right, because they say, oh, he's a QNR, so quite not right, because they cannot. They know he might have or that person might have an autism, and they have all different other things, but they cannot tell exactly what it is until they start to get older and older, and then you can say, yes, he has this, and that,
Yeah.
And,
now,
go ahead, Jim.
I was going to say, now that you've both of you have set the reality that mental health impacts everyone, it doesn't matter who you are. When it comes to such things such as culture, does culture play a role in mental health?
Absolutely, it does. And I know Bruno wants to speak to that as well. My personal experience has been very much what you alluded to about that machismo, that idea of this, masculine culture. Particularly, we see that a lot in the trades, and that is one of the reasons that construction workers now face, I believe the current statistic is 3 times more likely to commit suicide than your average adult. And so there's that hyper masculinity in construction and trades, and we see that a lot in the military as well. I mean, in the military culture, you buck up. You don't talk about it, and not only is it necessary, sometimes ignored, but it's very proactively. You don't talk about it. It's not just understood. It's you can be actually teased or bullied or made fun of for saying that you feel an emotion or that something was impacted you negatively. And so that's one aspect of culture. And then there's that side of ethnicity, which Bruno, you have talked to me about before.
Right. And in my personal, I have so many issues. Maybe I'm good damage, damaged goods or whatever. But most recently, I just got in. I just I'm divorced, right? For 3 months ago, 4 months ago, I was divorced with the mother of my kids. We've been together for 12 years. And it took a toll on me. I couldn't work well. I could not concentrate, and worse, a lot of times, there's people that suffer quietly. They don't say anything to people. Unfortunately, I'm not those kind of people.
No,
I pretty much
fortunately, you are not.
But then at the same time, no, because then you start to expose too much for people. And then, unfortunately, the reality is that a lot of people, they can use that against you too in the future.
Right.
So you got to be very careful who you're talking to, because unfortunately, that's human nature. There's a lot of people that really care about you, but there's a lot of people that they're not they're not interested to make you feel better. They're gonna gossip around. They're gonna tell things that you know and this is what happened with me. When I was getting divorced, I cried pretty much for everyone, because I was sad. It was a very dark moment of my life. I was together with this person for 12 years, and it's someone that it's family related. We're gonna be related for the rest of our life, right? Because we have
Right.
kids together.
Sure.
So it took a toll on me, and I didn't know who to talk to, and I started talking to pretty much everyone, exposing myself, and next thing our industry is so big, but yeah, everyone knows each other. I started hearing gossip from here, from there, from everywhere, and then I realized, man, who are really my friends? Who really should I trust? Because people can pretend and they have a good heart, and you open up to them. But unfortunately, I recommend, and now next time I learned my lesson. There's only few people that you can trust, but most importantly, you seek a therapist or maybe a
Right.
a psychiatric, someone that can really help you, cope with that.
How much do you think what you experienced has to do with your ethnic culture versus the trade of construction? Do you feel that there's been a difference?
Uh, Culture wise, yes, because you got to remember, I'm from Brazil, and even thought that it's sky high right now, divorce, especially here in the United States. People
Right.
getting divorced and they marry, and the next day they divorcing already. So it's
Right.
and it's something that's happening nationwide. But I came from an old tradition. My mom and
Right.
my dad, they were married. So I didn't came from a broke family that I had visitations or anything like that. And I had a promise, because I do have a child before, you know, meaning my ex-wife. Now I had a child with another person, and I had a promise myself to never be in a situation like that. I was like, if I find someone, I want to spend the rest of my life with that person,
Right.
having a child, and I want to see that child grow from the day we were born all the way until the 18. And my son now is 9 years old, and it didn't happen. And I felt like I feel like I fell to my own promise, to my own self, and to my kids. But
Right.
unfortunately, a lot of times you have to realize, that certain things happen for a reason. And you have to accept it, and it takes a time for you to heal, not only emotionally but physically too. Because I was tired, I didn't want to work. Whew, man,
But
I was
that really
nervous.
touches upon that there are different cultural
Yeah, culture,
expectations,
Yeah.
right?
it
In
affect
your
me. Yes.
And that's true, I think, with a lot of different ethnic groups that, either whether it's around, marriage and family, and certain, Asian traditions about, taking care of your elders, and certain Hispanic traditions about very close-knit families, and, not as prevalent for divorce as maybe American families would be. And just that idea of the masculine role in families as
Right.
well, sometimes plays a part depending on how you were brought up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, Jill, earlier, Bruno had mentioned about human nature. And my last question for you for this part one is that, how are perceptions changing?
At least in my experience, there's a definite shift towards. I was just speaking with my elder daughter about breaking the stigma, and her comment to me was, "Well, that's a nice hashtag, but it's harder to do in real life." And a lot of what we were just talking about is, necessarily the nature of, oh, what's going on with that person. But my reply to that is, well, we have the hashtag now. That's a start. We're bringing, it's not going to be solved by a hashtag, but we're having these conversations. We're more open. I have had conversations with people at gas stations because I have looked up at them and say, hey, you look like you're having a rough day, and have shared my story about how I'm struggling because my kid is struggling, or how maybe I was having, a time of my life that was not positive. And so I think that we are making strides. We are working towards making it more acceptable to talk about mental health, to talk about when we are not feeling well or not doing well. The idea that it's okay to not be okay, that, hey, yep, I'm in therapy. I saw a talk several years ago, actually, even probably 3 years ago, here in Cabarrus County, from the chamber. And their keynote speaker stood up and she said, well, I am married and my husband knows, but I'm seeing someone. And we all went, and she said, yep, I see a therapist every week. I go to a therapist. And it's just, it is becoming, we've got work to do, but I feel positive that we are moving in the right direction, that it is something that people don't have to hide. Like you talked about, you don't have to suffer in silence. You can find help. You can find resources. You can feel more vulnerable to talk about it without feeling like you might lose your job, or you might be, made fun of, or people might think you're not capable of doing something. How are you feeling about that, Bruno? Do you agree, or are
Well,
you?
I agree to disagree. I agree that there's more way to communicate now, but at the same time, a lot of people use social media. Look how sky high is the suicide in our country and in the world. People. I remember back in the '90s, you want to hear people going to a supermarket or going on the movies and shooting people and doing all that kind of stuff. That back. I think social media sometimes make people hide you know, uh, behind the screen, right?
Sure.
And that's when we can play a role to help them out, because you don't know what the people is suffering. Um, and it's kind of sad because this is a reality right now. People, I confess, I'm addicted to my cell phone, and a lot of times I got to put away, and I can't. But it's just that reality is that there's so many people right now that hide under the screen, and they have so many problems, and their parents they don't connect with the child, and they grow to be an adults, and they starting to commit horrible things to other people because they will not reach out. The parents didn't. I'm not blaming the parents, of course, but a lot of times that happened. And people suffer quietly, right? I'm different. When I suffer, everyone else. I lose weight, I gain weight, I'm quiet, I put it. But there's a lot of people that suffer very quietly, and you need to reach out to those people. Knock the door of your friend if you share a room with someone in a college or whatever, especially young people, right? Knock the
Right.
door, ask if the person's okay, or even if you feel that the person is not okay because you know that person, hey, take him out. Hey, let's grab lunch together. Let's,
Definitely.
So little by little, you gain that trust of the person, so that person might be able to tell you, instead of people judging, because a lot of people judge you. Uh, and I've been judged many times, and it's kind of sad because, like I say, in this industry, I hear so many things about me. People say, "Oh, Bruno is crazy. Bruno is this. Bruno is that."
If
And
you don't have haters, that just means you're not doing it right.
yeah, but you
Well,
know what? I start to get okay with. In the beginning, I was, someone was saying something like that. I want to find out who was the person. I want
Right.
to go after the person. But I start to realize, it's a waste of time. I got to take care of myself first before I take care of others. Because when you feel good, that's when you can help other people.
yeah, let's do this, Berna. Let's save the personal. You have some personal stories that you want to share, and Jill, you do as well for our second part. For this first part, what an awesome conversation that we've had, and what we want to talk about in the part two is going to be the faces of mental health, and share Jill's personal story and also a personal story from Bruno. So, Bruno, Jill, thank you so much for this first episode.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye. Ciao, amigo.